Welcome to this episode of Estate Agency X with myself, Mark Burgess, and Rob Brady, the elite performance coach at Iceberg Digital. In this episode, we're going to dig into what should an estate agency owner be thinking about at this moment in time. The market's a little bit slow for them. They've got a little bit more time on their hands than perhaps they did over the last 2 years. So what sort of things should they really be taking into account to plan for the future of their business to make sure that they are as successful as they can possibly be? So, Rob, try to put ourselves in the shoes of an estate agent at the moment in this current market. So at the time of recording now, it's the 6th of September, it's 2023. Someone might be listening to this there might be our future selves listening to this, right? And the market may have taken some catastrophic turn down or up or whatever it might be. But as of right now, not a great deal of stock coming on the market. Still okay. I think most agents that I'm talking to are saying it's still all right. But, people wondering what's going to come next. Interest rates are quite high compared with where they've been historically, and are due to probably creep up a little bit more. Mortgage rates have just dropped a little bit, so that's quite positive. But I'm not sure anybody really feels like they're cheap. You're running an estate agency. You've had a couple of very good years through the COVID times, but it's a bit slow. There's no real sort of immediate kind of sight of that market changing. The talk is maybe in early 2025, things might start to pick up, rates might start to drop a little bit. So, you've got this kind of market lying ahead of you for the foreseeable future. What should you be doing as a company? What should you be doing as a business? And have you ever experienced this before with agents, either as an agent or as a coach? What are some of the things that people should be thinking about?
The first one is acceptance of the market is as it is. I think if you're not accepting for what it is right now, then you're in that no man's land of actually taking action to doing something about it, or hope that next month all of a sudden things are going to change. But you say interest rates or mortgage rates, they lower, but it's wow, 0.1% lower. So it's not a greater change as that people are going to automatically flood back to the market. So if we look back if you start to review back in the times where this was before, if you're listening to or watching it, going back into the days where Brexit happened or the days where the first lockdown happened, you might still be in that same boat of what to do next. So then maybe start to look back on what did you do back in those times that actually were successful? What did you do the basics of and improving it? So, you can't magically bring more business or more people onto the market. You can't change people's views in it. The thing you can do is you can influence people's views that when they make that decision, whether it is, right now it's probably, your divorces, deaths, separations, moves, the must-have moves. The bit that you can control maybe on it is more around them thinking of you in that process, not actually trying to get them to actually physically come to the market right now. Yeah,
trying to convince them that it is a good market.
Yeah,
and maybe it is. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just it is what it is.
I think, and also I think when you look at any advertising or anything out there, people can read beyond that.
Yeah,
they've got their preconceived ideas of the news. So if you're then turning around and saying that the news, the main source that most people go to, apart from myself probably and you as well, you'll be going against what they perceive. So then all of a sudden, what camp are you in? So it's more of getting them to, especially right now, it's educational. How do you educate your market? This is happening, but this is what's happening locally. I accept that piece is correct. Mortgage rates, whatever it might be, to try and, so it goes back to, if your transaction levels are lower, then like, how do you ramp up your marketing efforts?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because like you say, like, you know, everybody kind of knows the main source of instructions are going to be, as you said, you know, death, marriage, birth, divorce. Those things are still going to happen. Perhaps people are going to think twice about upgrading their house if they had a birth, or, you know, whatever it might be. But those things are still going to happen. There's less frivolous moves, if that makes sense. It's a little bit like the idea of winning a general election, isn't it? You know, you've got some people that will always vote Labour or Conservative, and there's no way you'll change their mind, so there's no point in marketing to them. You've got some people that won't go out to vote, and there's no way you'll change their mind, so there's no point in marketing to them. And then you've got this middle group of people that they're the ones you have to market to. But we're in a market where that little group of the frivolous people they're gone, mostly gone. We're left with the Labour and the Tory people, the ones that there's no change in this fact that this person needs to move house. So now, how do we make sure that we're the person that they instruct for the right fee? Because more than ever, it's about the right fee, isn't it? If you're not going to get the volume whereby, yes, okay, you've probably got too much stuff on the market, you're probably too busy, but you're going to find a way of getting this all done, and you're going to bank the money, and you're going to have a holiday afterwards. Like, yeah, that's gone out the window for the foreseeable. I'm sure it'll come back at some point. So now what we're talking about is being lean, a lean organisation, while still giving a great service, and making sure that people see the value in what you're offering in order to pay you a decent fee for that one transaction, rather than thinking I'll make it up on the next one. It was a very similar kind of thing around COVID times, when not obviously most of COVID was great for estate agents, but the very, very beginning, where it was like everything shutting. There was that period, wasn't there? I remember you and I, you know, talking to a lot of agents back then, doing videos and stuff around, well, what we're going to do, and it was like, well, we're going to get ready for when the gates open. Yeah. And those that did, all right, everybody had a great time in COVID, but those that did immediately, like, you know, saw the benefit of that, because people were sort of bursting and ready to go. It was like a period of time where they didn't hear from any estate agents other than those ones that were putting out useful content, and not useful content saying, oh, when the market reopens, come to us. They were just putting out useful content, being there, being present. Of course, you know, when the time does come for that person to make a move, they're more likely to move to that person that they're familiar with, aren't they?
Yeah.
So how does somebody do that without getting drawn into, so if you're looking to sell your house today, we can do it for you cheaper than anybody and better than anybody, because that's not useful content, right? No one wants that rammed down their throat for the next 12 months.
I think one, it's sitting down and having a proper strategy. And I've talked about this before in a lot of podcasts, but a lot of the clients who have strategies and the clients who don't, you can tell their marketing is different.
Strategy?
As in, like, first thing is like even down to, like, we discussed it months ago, like your value proposition of like what value delivered to that client, like what problems are you solving for them, what is your regular message you put out to them, what do you stand for.
So where does someone start with that then, if they're not stuck, but they're stuck in the sense that when they list those things out in their head, they're the same as everybody else?
You really have to go deeper, have a look at like the core of why you even exist as a brand. Like, even
and maybe even you have to change why you exist as a brand.
Yeah, 100%. I think like you have to really look at maybe even going back to like when you set up your estate agency, or when you took over and bought an estate agency, like what was the essence of the passion of why you decided to do that, why you decided to step out and go on your own, like what was the fundamental beliefs that you had that made you want to go off your own and change that direction. If you're not, and you're like, I just want to set up my own to make some money, and then you're always going to be in that boat of competing with everyone else and sounding the same.
Okay, but you know, realistically, a lot of accidental entrepreneurs. When I say accidental, there's no real, someone like myself, there's no real path. There was no real path set for me to go on and become an entrepreneur.
No.
So something happened accidentally somewhere that pushed me into that. And I think of a lot of estate agency owners are similar to that. I don't think many sat down. Some, I've spoken to some, but I don't think many sat down and thought, I've got a real bee in my bonnet about something I want to solve in the world, and I'm going to do it. They, as you say, all right, well, there's money to be made here. Either I'm making it as an estate agent and I could make more on my own, or, that's generally the sort of route of, isn't it? Maybe they were a landlord and they were paying lots of property maintenance and they decided to open a letting agency. That's the sort of general kind of rule, way it goes. So I don't think those people should give up based on the fact that, like, you never started the business with a passion to change the world. Their experience can lead them to it as well, can't it? Because now, okay, yeah, that's fine. Now you did that, and everybody needs money to live, so we get it. The underlying purpose of the business is to make money. We understand that. Otherwise, there wouldn't be no point. You wouldn't be able to have the business if it didn't make any money. But now that you've got it, what do you find annoying? What do you find annoying about customers? What type of customers do you want to work with? And why do you like working with them? Because what problems is it you do end up solving with those people? And they can still go from, well, I don't know, I just set up the business to make money, to like actually figuring out, but who are you here for? Oh, we're here for everyone. We're just here to sell houses. Like, no, you're not. You're either there you either are the person that says, well, I think estate agents charge too much and we're willing to do a great service for 800 quid. Or you're not, or you're at the other end of like, well, I don't think, that people get a good enough service. So we like to give an incredible service and people should be willing to pay for it. Or, I like to help families because, I've got a family of my own and I can relate with them and I always have a good experience with them and they don't mind, paying for my service because they value it. Or I really like working with investors. Or even
like I'm a high end, I'm time rich, as in like, I value the meaning of an hour's worth of my time. So if you can take that away from me, and I'll pay you the fee for it.
Yeah.
Because I know my worth. So I think in any market, there is no real change in that. I mean, most agents I'm talking to right now have said like the higher end market tends to be struggling a bit more than maybe the first time market, but then that's depending on the type of market that you're in.
And also like it's of course it even in a busy time it will struggle more. It's lower volume.
Yeah.
But it's higher fee.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain agents that are happy to sell 3 houses a year. Like, of course it's going to be slower, but I bet they make more profit than a lot of the volume agents. Okay, so getting back to the original conversation, strategy, what we're talking about. Those agents that have a strategy versus those agents that don't. I said, what do you mean strategy? And we've just kind of dug into that a little bit, what the purpose of your company is. So, okay, those that have strategy, then what? How are they able to implement that and be better in terms of creating content and nurturing people than those that don't?
I think, it's because you have like almost a directional route that you can start to measure your efforts. So if you've got no strategy and you just need to put some stuff on social media,
just want to get some listings.
But it's like, we did 5 posts a day or 3 posts a day or 1 post a day. So
500 posts a day.
Yeah, what did you put on those posts? I don't know, just put anything just to get it out there. It's like, that doesn't help anyone. It's just noise. So having the strategy around, okay, like once a month we're going to do the following X, Y, and Z. So we're going to do these particular blogs. We're going to create a newsletter. We're going to make sure our Facebook ads are running. These are the messages on the Facebook ads. We're going to make sure we've got Google ads running. We're going to do stuff on Instagram. We're doing video reels, whatever it might be that suits you as a brand and how you like to portray your marketing. You have to have some measurable results each month for you do in your strategy. And also the variance to it. So like you said, going back to it, you could have one which is like, if you want to book a market appraisal and you're looking to move soon, here's our part. But if you've got that as the singular message, and the message that's repeated over and over and over again, that doesn't work. But if you've got a particular set of funnels you set up on Facebook that someone goes down the route of, and then they're doing instant valuation, and the kickback response is you talking on camera saying, if you're ready to book in now, here's our step process. That's the strategy you work with, because then at least you can measure going, when we did 5 of these videos a day and we did this, we had this much turn into instant valuation. So our marketing qualified leads, and that's increased. And then the instant valuations, because of our responses we did on that, we changed and tweaked this, it's actually generated this many booked market appraisal, and then that's converted into that. Whereas if you've got no strategy and you just want to sell houses, it's like, what are you going to do from there? I'm just going to put some stuff on Facebook, hope for the best.
Well, there's a couple of things you mentioned there that I just want to break down for some people listening that they probably understand, but we might have a slightly different view on it, or I might, or you might. But you mentioned, like, if you've got sort of funnels set up in Facebook, and for some people that can be an immediate, like, brain blows up. I don't know what you're talking about. The idea being, we've got a client who they create this. The system creates a newsletter for them every month, and in our WhatsApp group with all of our clients, it was being shown off last month because it was really good, and other clients were saying, "Oh, that's really good. Like, how did you do this? And how did you do that? And how did you do this?" And it's very simple when you really break it down. Funnels, newsletters, content, it's all very, very simple when you break it down, isn't it? When you start to understand that, like, there's a group of people out there that don't know your company exists. So what might be useful to them? There's another group of people out there that do know your company exists and are possibly thinking about selling their house. Imagine, again, like the shape of a funnel. They're one step down because there's a few less of them. What might be useful to them? There's another group of people out there that know your company exists, are thinking of selling their house, have had some interaction with you in the past, but haven't yet booked a market appraisal. What might they be thinking of that could be useful to them? There's a group of people that have had a market appraisal with you, but haven't instructed what could be useful to them. And there's a group of people that had a valuation and went with another agent, what could be useful to them. Everybody knows the answers to those questions. They get stuck and caught on, like, what would be great content? I don't know what to film. How did you do that newsletter? How did you do this? No, it's very simple. Like, what's a question that someone might say? Are interest rates likely to go up? Are interest rates likely to go down? How do I make sure that I know what I'm going to be paying for the next 2 years? To us, the answer's simple. You fix your rate. To them, they don't know. So give them that bit of content, and that's for people that are in this position.
Well, even a simple one that clients have set up on, like, just a genuine instant valuation journey would be like, what happens on a market appraisal? What is a market appraisal? Because to us, terminology is like, people. I use Kel, always my partner Kel. I was like, someone said to you, like, booking a market appraisal, what do you mean? She was like, no idea. Yeah. I was like, okay, market appraisal means this. So,
and what's the difference between a market appraisal and a valuation?
Yeah, and like, what would you call it?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, it's more like a property valuation. So, like I said, like, would it be useful if content was actually about that? And she's an ideal person. In the next 18 months, she's looking to sell. She's got exactly. She wants to sell.
And then, like you said, it becomes easier if you've got a strategy as well, because we can add the strategy onto it and go, so what would our stance be on this particular subject if we were specifically looking to appeal to families that are thinking about moving? And it becomes less generic. And then using, as you said, using tools like Facebook or Lifecycle, you can narrow down and target, okay, now what's going to happen is I've spent some time making a piece of content that specifically, if you're a small family that are thinking about moving home but are worried because of interest rates, you might be interested in reading this, in listening to this short piece of content, and it's going to land in front of people with a small family that have lived in their house for more than 4 years or something like that. That's where you start to really be able to influence people and niche it down, and you don't need to add on the end of it. So if you're thinking about selling, we can do it. We can do it cheaper. We can do it better. We're the number one. And if you want to buy a watch, if you want to buy a carpet, we're here for you.
But even on the strategy side to it, people still get bogged down with where to start. So like that part, you could be like, once a month for the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to measure that. One of our pieces is going to be advice for people who are families looking to sell soon, or advice around the market for families, and that's a seller's advice. It could be another piece around, we need to educate our first-time buyers process to make sure that they're affordable. So it could be a buying piece for first-time buyers. So each month when you come into it, it's not like, what do we write? Automatically, you're like, it's advice for sellers around for family home people, etc. And it's like, last month we did this. How did that work? Actually, it was well received. Okay, any of you guys have got any particular questions that are coming back this month from people? We're getting a lot of these things. That's the title. And then you start it again.
And this is a great way of being able to use something like ChatGPT as well without just churning out some generic bullshit article. You can actually go to it and say, can you write me some sort of video structure for how I might complete a 5-minute video that would be really useful to a family with 2 small children that are thinking about moving, that are worried about interest rates. And you can play around with it and do things like that without having to use it to just, write me the content. That's a bit generic. Well, I'll use it anyway. You make the content, but you just might want a few tips on where to get started. You know, of course, you might not need that, but there's tools out there that can help you for this sort of stuff now and give you some really nice structure where you still end up with unique personal content about you. You just needed a little bit more guidance maybe on that a system like ChatGPT might come up with a few bullet points where you think to yourself, that's a great idea. You know, instead of you just sitting around going, well, yeah, we were supposed to do this content, but I don't know what to talk about. Anyway, I've got this viewing to book.
And I think that's where it's the commitment. So how badly is it difficult for you right now? Like if you are scraping by each month and you're getting frustrated, then you need to flip that frustration into drive rather than anger or moaning or just talking about the market in its general. And we see it. I see a lot of clients who adapt to the market. I put a post up today saying, do you allow to run the day? Do you allow to run the day, or do you allow the day to run for you? And it's like just things like setting up each month, each week, each day, going, right, how are we going to take this on rather than it take over us?
Things happen for you, not to you.
And I think, if the strategy side to it, even once a month, sitting down for a couple of hours, the first one's going to be a bit difficult if you're starting this from the beginning because it's going to be very time consuming, just getting that process. But as you roll on, it's like, we've done it for years in our company. Like I know what content I need to write as a coach, and we've got marketing guys, and we've got Kelly with her customer experience, and you write stuff from the CEO perspective on where you see the future going. So, but no one has to come to me and say, we don't even have to have those meetings anymore. It's a case of, like, I know each month, a part of that, our marketing strategy is that for us to articulate it in a way that it's not just random crap, it's actually written by people in the company who are experts in what they're doing. We know our strategy of what we're doing for that.
I guess one of the big differences that I see as well is like a lot of agents tread, and they must feel like they just tread water, you know, we know that there's money to be made in a estate agency, and it's not that complicated to do it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's some good estate agents, there's some poor estate agents, there's all sorts of arguments, but the real basics of estate agency is you get a house on the market, when the price is right, if it's being advertised, it kind of sells, right? So the journey along could be horrific, it could be fun, it could be not fun, but it could be, a nice experience, it could be a terrible experience. You might get slightly more, slightly less, depending on how good your agent is. I get all of that, but the general principle. And so I see a lot of agents that tread water waiting for the market to help them out, because it will inevitably do that at some point. But it's so much easier and so much more enjoyable to just take control of it and go, you know what, I'm going to actually build a business. Remember when we had COVID, this particular market really reminds me of is when the first lockdown came and everybody cried and wondered what was going to happen.
And it was that point where everyone was looking on that government thingy to see whether under retail it included estate agents.
All of that, right? But everybody was ready to take drastic action. They were ready to, change the way their company worked. We moved forward with technology 10 years in a month. Everybody jumped on Zoom, even grandparents, everybody moved forward with this technology. My kids' school, they no longer needed school bags. I mean, obviously to start with, they were remote working, that wasn't a thing. Remote schooling, that just rolled out like that globally. right, within a month. And like, you know, all the great work that Stephen Brown was doing with laptops for schools and all of this kind of stuff, it all just happened. And then when they did go back to school, all they needed was an iPad. They didn't need anything else. It was like phenomenal. And estate agents were the same. And I remember talking to some estate agents at the time and saying to them, listen, at some point, it's likely you're going to calm down from your panic mode at some point. You need to be careful not to just sink back into where you were, because shit will hit the fan again at some point, and you need the emergency switch that you can flick when it happens. No, don't go back to panic mode again, and start wondering what you're going to do. How is your organisation more lean now than it was like 3 months ago? You made that change just like that. Imagine if you really thought about it and strategized how lean your organisation, how efficient it could become. But instead what happens is life becomes a little bit easier. I guess a bit like, maybe you train hard to lose some weight, or you eat well to lose some weight, and then you have that period whereby it sort of goes off on the wagon and you have a holiday and you put on a stone and whatever. And it just feels like that. Why are my kids having to take massive bags back into school when it was possible to work on an iPad? Why did we go back to that? Why have we stopped thinking about how to have a lean organisation and be efficient and nurture people and look to the future? And as well as you can still, I'm not saying you can't try and win business now, but why did we go back to that? Because we got lazy. That's the ultimate answer, isn't it?
Yeah, because it comes back to the whole habit formations and actual forming new habits and rituals in your business. Schools do it. A lot of people have done it.
Easy option. Getting houses on the market. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, and I think it's easy to go back into it because houses just come on the market. But like you said, the market we're experiencing now is no different than what the tidal wave that you said about before. Somewhere down the line, there's going to be a period of technology is going to hit through. Obviously, you didn't predict COVID, but there's something that's going to transition. That we're going to be on this wave, and all of a sudden, it's going to start to crash to the other side. And we're in that moment where it's starting to happen. And I think what the industry, I noticed from the outside perspective, was rather than people thinking of new ways of being leaner, they've gone back to the old traditional roots. We're busy, we need more people to qualify stuff, so we need more bodies. So we put the bodies in place, get them in place. They think it's a very easy market because they've never worked on anything else. They're just plugging away. And then we just need more people doing that. We've got more market appraisers. We need more people doing that. We need more people doing that. So all of a sudden you've got this massive organisation.
Huge wage
thinking bill. That it was very naive to think that there was going to be the same amount of houses every year like this. Come on, you had to really look at yourself and go, when I was doing this process, did I really think that this was going to be the heyday of forever?
Yeah. So many organisations have made that mistake in the past, that if you did some research, you'd see it doesn't work like that.
No, and I think in that process now, we've obviously come off the other side. We've had a massive surge of massive things changing in the industry, as in because the interest rate rises, everything's cost of living or cost of this or cost of that, energy prices, cost of living crisis. So obviously there's been a massive change in how the consumer then buys and looks at their finances and stuff like that. So the consumer's constraints on their stuff, and they can come along because they've got more leaner stuff. It's not that they've gone out and had 5 more children. It's get rid of that expense, get rid of that expense, get rid of that expense. With a estate agency, it's very much harder to do that because the things you're getting rid of is really people within your brand. People who are probably sitting there doing nothing really within that process because the volume of work for them is not that anymore. And there's no real change in their job roles or what they could do. So it's not like when you talk about prospect or I've got someone out putting leaflets and letters for the door as their new job role. It's so they went from having this really rewarding job going out and doing market appraisals, and now you're saying you're earning less and I want you out just putting leaflets for the door. All of a sudden you're going to get a drop in morale. So you have to look at it as in
not just a drop in morale, leaflets through doors. I had a post up was saying on another podcast, like I had a post up on social media of an example of all of these touting letters that an estate agent had found at one of their properties. There were about 15 of them, and I was just saying, like, you can't ask for a premium fee because you're, you know, sought after company and go begging with touting letters.
Yeah.
And that an agent was saying, well, I disagree. We get lots of instructions from touting letters. And that's not the point that I was making. The point I was making is you didn't do anything to win the business in the first place. Everything you're doing is last minute. You know, if you had done the work in the beginning to make sure that the instructions came to you and you had enough instructions that you were oversubscribed and busy doing what you were doing, you wouldn't then be running around trying to win business of all the other houses that are on the market.
Yeah.
It's only a consequence of the fact that you haven't got enough stock. They didn't choose you; they chose someone else. Now you have to do that job.
And we've talked about it quite a few times in the podcast before. Like that, because of that process, it might work for you. But when you've got less stock coming onto the market, less stock to tout in that strategy, really, like the strategy is to tout the properties that are coming to the market.
15 outlets.
Yeah, it's less than that. And all of a sudden you've got more people trying to do that because the market's dried up. They go back to those old traditional ways.
It's doing the lazy. This is how it works. This is how estate agency works. You send out letters, you get instructions, you put it on Rightmove, you reduce the price until someone buys it. Hey, we make some money.
Yeah,
that's it. That's your business.
Yeah,
it's easy to kill. It will die completely at some point. So there's a way of avoiding that, but it involves you totally changing about the way you think, because that method has been around since the 1980s, possibly even before that. But you know, it's definitely been around since the 1980s, and you can still make some money a little bit, but you will get wiped out. There's no real business there. There isn't another business that runs like that. There isn't another industry that still runs like that.
But even to the point where when you look at the consumer themselves, people go, yes, but like no one really gets letters for the day, so it appears on the doorstep. But obviously, imagine someone coming through the doorstep and coming back from holiday, having 15 letters.
I've just had it. I just came back from holiday
and just open them up.
I had a big pile of posts. Every single bit of it was bullshit.
Yeah, most of the stuff is like, I look at it going, most people expect modern, forward-thinking businesses to be digitalised.
I don't think you can say that touting letters do not work. I think there would be enough agents out there that go like, that's just not true. I have got business out of it. And that's not the issue. The issue is the cost, the time, the effort, and why you're having to do it. Why are you having to do it? Because they didn't choose you in the first place. Like, why? And if what happened? We didn't think, we didn't plan ahead. We didn't. Yeah. When that person reached, as the analogy you used, the airport and the destination they decided was to put their house on the market, they did not choose you. Your pre-marketing work isn't good enough.
You're at the other end in the other airport going, you sure you wanted to pick this holiday?
If that holiday goes wrong,
I'll take you to another hotel, and you'll have the best holiday. But
and it does work, but it only works if the other agent fucks it up.
Yeah, I think when you go back to what we originally said about strategy wise, like the focus is more on how can you articulate the experience that you offer to someone in that profile of individual you're trying to find, rather than we get a higher fee, or we get a better price, or we get this, or the common thing about it is like I get really frustrated by overvaluing, and it's like, well, people should undervalue and it should be this price, and it's like I always find it quite interesting with those conversations happening, because it's like, so basically what you're saying is you're annoyed by people putting on 20 grand because if you get it for 200 grand, you're going to sell it tomorrow. So if you're going to sell it tomorrow, what makes you different to any other estate agent that wants it on at 200 grand?
It's a great point. And every estate agent's annoyed about overvaluing, and no estate agent overvalues, right? It's like,
So I think in that part, it's like, those are sort of things like right now, if you're frustrated with the overvaluing, you go, okay, how do I flip it on my head? How do I talk about not overvaluing or lower fees or whatever it might be? How do I talk with someone who is looking to move soon about the experience they're going to receive from us? Why? What makes us different?
Who do we exist for?
Yeah.
And they've got the time to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, hopefully things are getting busier for people. That's a good sign. But as long as they're busy in a good way, not just taking on properties that are never going to sell. So they've got time to do it. I guess the message that we're trying to give out of this podcast is like, don't just tread water and wait for the market to pick up and then you're too busy to change anything. When you were super busy, you wanted time to be able to think, strategize. Where's the future of the company going? What are we going to change? What are we going to do to move forward? How are we going to protect our business? You got the time. Think about it. How can you become lean? How can you start to appeal to people before they make the decision to put their house on the market?
And I've got one last thing before we end. If anyone's listening to it or anyone watching this, I'll include the link into Estate and Six live sessions. I did like 11 strategy sessions around so many different things that are not like life cycle led. It's more around getting you to think differently around an approach of lead generation or how to expand your markets without having to take on more staff or offices, etc. And they've always been successful in people thinking a little bit different after those sessions.
Perfect. Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed. And then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.